Welcome, fam. What is going on? Welcome. Today we are looking again at the Bible diet, the food list, and yesterday I didn't realize that the internet was dropping frames. So I think there was a bit of a lag in terms of like the video, but I think the audio was pretty good. So hopefully today we're good. I'm looking at everything. Looks like we are good to go. The frames are not dropping. Everything is good. So this is this is sometimes a challenge with doing live streams. So sometimes you're not sure what technical difficulties you're going to come across. But anyway, so I think yesterday. So just to recap, in case it was a bit annoying, just the beginning when the frames are dropping. I just wanted to maybe recap what we went over yesterday, which was the Bible diet, and we covered what God intended for us in the beginning and some of the verses that talk about food. So, just like in the beginning in Genesis, it talks about how God gave us all the plants, all the seed bearing trees for us to eat as food. And then after the flood, God made another covenant with Noah, and he gave us everything that moves on the earth to be food, which included animals. And so that's kind of like the difference between some people who say we're not supposed to eat meat and the people who say that we're actually allowed to eat meat, and God still intended for us to eat meat because obviously like after the flood there's probably less vegetation right then, so God gave us more food for an abundance for us to have food. And when you think about it, he also talked about how we're supposed to eat the animals and the kinds of animals that we're supposed to eat. And he talked about eating food and meat that has no blood inside. So no blood, making sure that all the food is kosher. So that's one of the things that God asked us to do when it comes to eating our food. And more so importantly, like even with the meats, he gave us the types of meats that we could eat and the types of meats that we couldn't eat, including fish, including insects. And when you read that in Leviticus, it's really showing that he wanted us to take care of our health. When he said that these animals are unclean, these animals are clean. Because when you think about it, like he's also talking about like touching carcasses to say, okay, when you touch them, you're unclean and you have to wash and wait for a day and then you be clean again. So when you think about it, it's also like how they were supposed to actually live in society with these animals, because obviously like if you're living with animals and you don't know how that animal died, and if you touch that animal then you go back to your community, and at that time like they didn't, I don't know, maybe they had doctors, but it doesn't really talk about doctors. So it's still important to realize that what the Bible has taught us is a wisdom. And inherently, some of these animals that we try eat as meat and consider meat, they also have a higher likelihood of carrying different diseases and parasites. So I gave the example of pork as well to say inherently it is an animal that is not clean by the nature of how it lives. So we've managed to domesticate them, but it doesn't take away that inherent nature of that animal. So it would be wise for us not to just indulge in some of these animals and eat them just because, they put in the grocery store and they're saying that it's food. And one of the things, again, is we have to take care of our land as we live, because one of the things is that we've gone so far from our food. There's so much distance because now we have convenience and ease where we can just go into the store and just grab a packet of chicken or pork or beef and just go home, or you can order it too, right? So there's convenience. But also God wanted us to take care of these animals at the same time. So it wasn't just about being looking at them as just food to eat, but we're also supposed to tend to the animals. And in the other video that I talked about how what food is and the energy that we get from food, I explain some of these things, how we've evolved from what God had intended from the beginning to where we are now, where we're engineering food. We've got Monsanto, we've got McDonald's, we've got all of these different companies that have managed to engineer the food. And for whatever reasons, they're probably good reasons. Some people who have found benefit from these foods because they're also increasing production for food and accessibility for food may be cheaper. But when we think about it, it's like we start trying to solve these problems, but then the issue is we've created those problems to begin with. And how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to eat, we've started flipping everything upside down by the way that we've actually approached our health and how we live in our environments and everywhere we go. So, today, the main thing that I wanted us to focus, I've just recapped what we looked at yesterday. And also we're supposed to eat in moderation. So that is part of what God wanted for us and God intended. Because in Proverbs, we read about honey, how King Solomon, someone who had an abundance, he was a king who had an abundance. And he talked about eating just enough honey. Otherwise, if you have too much, you will vomit. So that is key for us to understand. Even wine, it talks about wine and how we're supposed to drink in moderation if you're drinking wine. So those are things that the Bible teaches us, not just to say eat these kinds of foods, but it also tells us how to eat them, how to have a healthy relationship with the food, not to overindulge, not to give to our own carnal nature, not to give to our own fleshly desires, removing that, going away from debauchery. So, those are things that God is trying to allow us to live a life that we are fulfilled. We have room for the Holy Spirit, not try to fill ourselves with food, with wine, and gorge on so much food that we leave no room for the Spirit and for the Holy Spirit to dwell in us, because our role is to be stewards and to make sure that we're taking care of the temple of the Holy Spirit, because God's Spirit wants to dwell in us. But when we try and fill ourselves with food or with wine, we're drifting and going further and further away from what God intended for us. So in today's stream, we want to look at the actual list of the different foods that God mentioned or that are mentioned in the Bible. And then we can look at the function and the benefits to our health. And we're looking at this from a point of understanding what the Bible says and also understanding what science also reveals about these scriptures and these foods that we're going to look at. So, this is the essence of the Bible diet. So, today, within the Bible diet, we're going to look at the food list. And I think yesterday we looked at the sample plan of the 7-day Bible diet meal plan. So we're going to look at a comprehensive list of the foods that are mentioned in the Bible. And then from there, if you want to build a diet or a meal plan, you can also do that using the same foods and understanding the function that they have. And some of these foods might be available to you, and some of them might not be as easily available. So you want to see and find, okay, what is available to me? What can I include in my diet? And you don't have to do an overhaul of your entire diet, but you can pick maybe one, two things that maybe you might just replace or choose to remove from your diet. So, this again is something that just is going to help us so much in terms of making sure that we're living a life and we're energizing our bodies, we're nourishing our bodies, and that way we live a life that is more aligned with what God wants. Excuse me, and allow the Holy Spirit to enter us and leaving room for the Holy Spirit. Foods, oh my goodness, foods that align with what God intended. So let's look at the foods. Let's go. Okay. So now we're going to go through this list and look through to see what we have. So now, yeah, I hope you can see this. Okay. I think you can see this. Okay. This should be good. Okay, so we're going to look at this. So we've got the food over here in the first column, and then we've got the Bible verses, and then we've got the role, and we've got the function, the nutritional function of each food, and how it helps to nourish us and support our health. So, first thing we have seed-bearing plants and herbs. These are mentioned in Genesis 1, verse 29. Foundational foods, micronutrients, fiber. So, this is a pretty broad category covering fiber, vitamins, minerals, plant compounds. And we talked about micronutrients when we talked about engineered food, that most of the engineered food leaves out most of the micronutrients. So, plant bearing plants, seed bearing plants, and herbs will be a great source for us to find these. And now, these days, we find that when we don't have as much of these vitamins and micronutrients, we're now resorting to taking supplements because the supplements might have higher amounts. So, which means that we still are having to pay so much. Like the food is not giving us the nutrients, all the nutrients that we need. And then now we still have to get supplements to supplement. So, again, this is not how God intended for us to live and how to eat. We're supposed to be able to just eat food. The food nourishes us because sometimes we're saying that okay, like I can just go into the store and get this food, but we're paying a cost for that convenience and that comfort. So plant rich uh, plant rich pattern supports digestion, appetite control, blood sugar steadiness, and long term cardio metabolic health. So again, like I mentioned in the other stream, the micronutrients are supporting our immune functions. So our health, fighting off diseases, stabilizing our blood sugar, and just making sure that we are supporting our heart health. So everything that we need is found in the micronutrients, everything for our internal systems that work inside us, like the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, the what else? Digestion system, hormone, endocrine system. And those systems all work with micronutrients. So we need those. We need those in our diet. Okay. Vegetables, those are pretty straightforward. I know we talked again about Daniel fast. It's another very good example of a diet that is found in the diet in the Bible. So Bible diet also includes the fast as well if you wanted to partake in a fast. And Daniel has a fast that we've ascribed as a lot of people have, like Daniel fast. So you can find vegetables in Daniel 1 verse 12 and 15. So these are good for recovery. Micronutrients, again, very good. We get our fiber, potassium, folate, vitamin C, vitamin K, antioxidants, right? So, like removing inflammation in our system, any toxins, flushing out everything that's not supposed to be in our bodies because our bodies are designed with intelligence. And when we nourish our bodies with food, we're also supporting that intelligence to actually like the body to perform the way that it's supposed to. So peak performance. So this is from supplying the system with what it needs, with the fuel that it needs, so that the body performs at a peak level. So high vegetable intake is linked with low blood pressure, better digestive health, and lower risk of heart disease and stroke. Okay, next thing we've got leafy greens, including kale and spinach. So these are also still part of like vegetable family group. So we've got Daniel 1, verse 12, also implied biblical vegetable meals, so micronutrient support, recovery support, vitamin K, folate, fiber, carotenoids. So leafy greens are very good for you. So leafy greens help cover micronutrient needs and support blood clotting, red blood cell production, and overall recovery. So with the blood clotting, blood clotting, let's say for example, if you had a cut, right, some people tend to just bleed out. And so when your body can actually clot, right, that is a function for your body to help you with the healing process to stop the bleeding. And so some people take blood thinners because they need blood thinners, but they're not always good for you, right? So if you also have leafy greens, they help with your blood as well. So red blood cell production. So these are different functions that are important for you because even if you think about someone with diabetes, right? Like if they have like a wound, they might not be able to heal as fast. So things like greens, vitamin C, those are important to help with the healing. So these are some of the things that we need to think about and add into a diet. And then bitter herbs, so we've got Exodus 12, verse 8. We can find bitter herbs there. So digestive support category. So this does help. So things like ginger will be one of those. Typically low calorie, phytochemical rich plant foods. So beta, bitter and leafy herbs. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah. Bitter and leafy herbs are not magic, right? But they fit into our system. And whole foods that support digestive micronutrient intake, their value is more about overall dietary quality than hype, right? So these are not always fun to to eat or to drink or whatever however you have them, right? So but they help with your digestion. They help remove toxins in your body, and they help things move in your belly, in your intestines. So you want to make sure that you're shocking the system. You shock the system. Okay, so now we've got wheat, and a lot of times now, I think we talked about like some of these genetically modified foods, because there's been this trend which we talked about before, like at one point this one food group is the enemy, and then a couple of years go by and then a different food group is the enemy now. So things like wheat or most grains have been demonized because they say that they don't have any value to us. And while that is true, because some of them have been genetically modified and a lot of the nutrients have been stripped away, it's just about producing volume and the weight just to meet the weight requirement. But the actual content and the value in the wheat might not be there, might be lacking. And different countries have different regulations as to how some of these plants or these different grains are supposed to be grown, especially if you're looking at commercial grains. So some might not have as many nutrients depending on the soil, depending on the types of seed that are used, and the different types of pesticides and different things really when it comes to farmers. So any farmers out there can, chime in. But these are the things that and now in today's age we are facing. And it's not to say that wheat on its own is bad, but also like things like gluten. Some people are saying, okay, I'm gluten intolerant. But most times, when you think about like back in the day, like sure, like allergies exist, but some of these things only started happening more recently. Someone saying like, okay, I'm allergic to this, like, oh, I react to gluten. Oh, so it's like I never really heard a lot of people talk about like gluten insensitivity. I mean, gluten sensitivity like way back. Like you wouldn't hear that as much. But the question is, why do some of these things just start popping up? So those are the things that we have to ask ourselves. And it's like maybe one thing reacts or someone responds to a certain thing, something that's been engineered in that food that makes it hard for them to eat that food and they bloat or they gain weight. So it means that most of this food, most times, that it's missing the micronutrients that are supposed to be in there. So Ezekiel 4 verse 9 has that wheat. Deuteronomy 8 verse 8 also talks about meat. So this is a primary carbohydrate fuel. Whole grains, carbohydrate, fiber, B vitamins, minerals. When eaten in whole form rather than refined form, grain supports steady energy, satiety, training fuel. So this is one of the reasons why for my diet personally, like I like to have the oatmeal in the morning because it gives me sustained energy. And when you look at some of these grains are not the types of grains, well, the grains that actually whole food and whole wheat, they're not over processed. They give us steady energy where it doesn't really spike or insulin, but it's a steady rise in the insulin, right? And then the crash, it's not as bad. So you want to really think about the types of grains. It's not to say don't eat them completely. You want to eat them in moderation, but also find the whole grains that are made without any, well, too many pesticides, because I'm sure like most are going to have pesticides, but that are also organic, maybe locally sourced. If you have like farmers around you that do farm these, you can also talk to them not to get just um, the big brand products because or no name product depending on where you are. So the ones that are just made commercially and supplied to some of the big box stores like Walmart and stuff. So think about that. Find locally sourced foods. This is the best way for you to be able to have good quality food. Okay, so same thing with barley. So you've got Ezekiel 4, verse 9, John 6, verse 9, same thing, carbohydrate, fuel, fiber, whole grain, carbohydrate, soluble fiber, right? So whole grains such as barley provide fiber and minerals that support fullness, digestive health, and better metabolic control than refined grains. So again, with some of these grains, you're supporting your digestive system because they have a lot of fiber. Because what happens is that insoluble fiber that goes into your system, the fiber, it also helps to move things through your intestines and through your guts. And so when you eat that and then you have your water or you have some liquids, they help flush your system out. And it's like if people are talking about psyllium, that's the same function of psyllium. So some people go get like just the fiber itself, the insoluble fiber, meaning that it doesn't get absorbed and they're not it doesn't dissolve and get absorbed in your system, but it actually helps to push your digestive system, anything that's in your digestive system in your intestines to push it out. So that's one way that some people try and help and assist their digestive system, right? So now we're looking at spelt and millet. So same thing, carbohydrate. This is fuel again, whole grain carbohydrate fuel, ancient, and it fits again, minimally processed carb sources for stable energy and a broader variety. So these are all carbs, as you see, including bread, right? So bread is a very common theme throughout the Bible. It's bread, right? And then there's also unleavened bread with no yeast. And we have Psalm 104, verse 14 to 15, Matthew 4, verse 4. So this is very consistent throughout the Bible. Bread is such a staple through centuries, like almost like all cultures. I haven't come across a culture doesn't eat bread. I haven't heard of one, but this is quite consistent throughout the ancient times. Bread, and we've kept it quite consistent. So bread also can sustain your energy. And the key thing again, it's like always looking for the whole grains, not overly processed. So like breads that have been baked with whole grains instead of like processed super refined flour. Like don't stay away from those ones because they lack in nutritional value and nutritional content. So you want to stick with the whole grains. Okay, so now we're gonna go beans. Beans, now we're talking about our legumes. So we've got Ezekiel 4, verse 9, protein plus fiber. Plant protein, fiber, folate, minerals, you find folate minerals, digested carbohydrate, right? Beans support a fullness, gut health, blood sugar control, heart health, which makes it strong for near weight, fitness, or staple food for both fat loss and long-term health. So it works and fits in the system. This is why I like beans as also like part of the native weight system, because within the Bible diet, we we have beans. Because some people will be like, okay, I don't want to eat too much meat, so this is a good source depending on what type of beans, because not all the beans are made equally. So you always have to look at the nutritional facts, just kind of like how we looked at MyFitnessPal, how to look and read nutritional labels to find the ones that have high protein, because some of them will be different. So you've got black beans, you've got kidney beans, you've got red beans, you got brown beans, you have different types of beans. So you want to look and see which one has the most protein. And a lot of beans also, we consider them high in protein because we're also comparing them to other carbs, because technically beans are carbohydrates, they're not protein, but they have a decent amount of protein for their profile. They have a decent amount of protein for a carbohydrate. So it's important to consider beans. If you're someone who's like, okay, I don't want to eat too much meat, like, okay, you can add some beans into your diet, which is fine. But protein is also made of amino acids. And not all of the amino acids will be found through eating beans, because different functions in your body require different types of amino acids. So it will help you reach your protein goal, but you're not going to get all the different types of protein. So, but if you have any worries, that's also like a good source, right? So, okay, so let's lock this in first. Wait, let me freeze this. Uh, okay, perfect. So now you can see that top row. So frozen, we'll make that. Let's go. Let's give it a different color. Okay, so we'll scroll down. Okay, so we've got beans. We've talked about beans, right? So we've got that. And then we've got lentils, very similar to beans, not too different, right? So helps with satiety, gut health, blood sugar regulation, and very, very nutritious. And if you remember, so this was in Genesis 25:34, in 2nd Samuel 17:28, Ezekiel 4:19. And Genesis, that's where you have Esau and Jacob, right? So that's the lentil soup. And Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of lentil soup. So lentils are a good source of food, of protein as well, and also carbs and just general minerals and folate and fiber, everything. So it's very good. So some people make like lentil curry soup, and yeah, I mean they just make some soup that's actually very good, and you can eat it with your bread, depending on what types of meals that you like. So you can really design and create a diet just using the Bible diet food list. And this is, yeah, so this is an example again. And then we also have a fruit from trees, Genesis 1, verse 29, and Genesis 1, verse 11. So fruit, probably. underrated. A lot of people, I don't know, like some people don't like eating fruit. Excuse me. But fruit is one of the best sources for natural sugars. Most trees, most fruit. So they're good for like recovery carbs. So like let's say if you've done a workout because you've got natural sugars which your body can quickly digest very fast and gives you energy. And so I don't know if you've gone through this like when you're like just hungry or you're just like okay like I need a bit of energy. When you eat a banana or just an apple, like boom, 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 now you've got a little bit of energy, right? So those are good for just, replenishing and adding some energy into your system once you've done some physical activity or as you're about to do a physical activity. So these are good. So it's a mix. You've got carbohydrates, fiber, antioxidants, vitamins, and yeah, so some fruits will have water because they carry water. So, like, let's say watermelons, you got pineapples, they'll have a lot of hydrating properties because they hold a lot of liquid. And so you've got fruit that supports hydration, recovery, fiber intake, healthier diet patterns overall. Whole fruit beats processed sweets because it brings nutrients and fiber with the carbohydrates. Yeah, and this is one of the things that a lot of times when you're choosing and picking food, and someone says like I'm craving something, right? When someone's saying I crave something sweet, it's always thinking about, okay, but what are you missing? What's causing that craving? So you can still have that craving satisfied, and you still feel full, because a lot of times the cravings come from trying to eat something. Let's say for example you're trying to eat something and it lacks the nutrients as well to satisfy that craving. So, like, let's say instead of eating sweets that are just manufactured, it's just all sugar, you can eat something with some nutrients because it now gives you more than just sugar. You also have nutrients. You're nourishing your body. You're nourishing your body. So, those are things to think about. Grapes, same thing. So, grapes, which then is what they use to make wine. So grapes, you've got Numbers 12, verse 23. You mentioned in there Deuteronomy 8, verse 8. And they're used for recovery carb, and antioxidant support, natural carbohydrates, polyphenols, vitamin K, potassium. So grapes are such a good source of energy and antioxidants as well. So, and then also grape seeds are good. You should eat grape seeds because they also help. And grapes provide quick energy and plant compounds in your system. They fit best as a whole food carb, not as an excuse for excess sugar. So you can also do green grapes, you can do red grapes, any of them. You can eat any of them. So there's a lot of variety depending on where you are, right? So you can find these foods, add them to your diet, and if you can grow them, that's even perfect. If you can grow them, that's perfect. So you can have them, just enjoy them, natural source, just growing. I really think that a lot of people in the next coming years are just going to be looking to just grow their own food and just be self-sufficient. So because really, like, I think some of this we've drifted so far from what God intended for us and how we're supposed to live. And with the way the world is going, people are realizing, like, okay, well, my grocery bills are going to go up. Like, why should I be worrying about my grocery bills? Why don't I just make my own food and be self sufficient? Those are the questions that are going to start popping up for a lot of people, right? Say, hey, let's start becoming self-sufficient, figuring out like, okay, how do I make my own natural, how do I even get my own natural sugars? Like start 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 growing an orchard, get a greenhouse, grow some veggies, and you don't have to worry about food prices going up all the time because you're like, okay, I can actually farm, I can actually make some food on my own. I don't have to worry so much about the groceries, right? So these are things to think about because the world is changing. Okay, so we've got figs. Second Kings verse Second Kings 20 verse 7, Deuteronomy 8 verse 8. So that's where we hear about figs. And Jesus also talked about figs. He cursed the fig tree as well. He was like so mad. He was like, yo, why aren't you giving me fruit? And then he cursed it. And then the fig tree withered. And figs are good. They're great source of sugar as well because the longer that they live and they're ripe, because you know how fruit is like when fruit ripes, it really accumulates the sugar. So it's also a good source of sugar, just along with dates. I think we're going to talk about dates soon. But yeah, so figs support they have digestive support, recovery, for recovery as well with the carbs, potassium. You find fiber, potassium, calcium, vitamin K, polyphenols, so very nutrient packed. And figs can support digestive regularity, meaning that you can go to the toilet a lot, and micronutrient intake. So I guess, like, obviously this is for entertainment purposes as well and informational purposes. So some of these foods, they heal in different ways where they revitalize your energy. Not to say that they're going to specifically heal any medical condition that you might have, because I'm obviously sharing with you right now. But if you have like any specific conditions, it's always good to go to your doctor and consult with a professional or whatever condition you might have. But as we read here, like the biblical healing moment in 2 Kings, in Second Kings, is not proof that figs can cure disease universally, but nutritionally they're a strong whole food option. So most of the whole food options are strong options to help support your health. Not that they're going to directly heal whatever condition you might have, because the different factors and variables that might be in play. So it's just good to have these options for whole foods ready for us, right? So that's what we have: figs, pomegranates, right? We've got pomegranates. We've got Deuteronomy 8 verse 8, Songs of Solomon 4 verse 3, antioxidant support, polyphenols, vitamin C, potassium. And pomegranates are best framed as nutrient dense fruit with antioxidants and anti inflammatory potential. Not a miracle food, but very nutrient dense and packed. So, always good to keep that in mind. Some of these high nutrient packed foods with a lot of nutrients, just to have those, just eat them. Just, even if you find them, because sometimes depending on how available they are, depending on where you live, it might be good to, when you find them, if you go into those like locally sourced or like the imports, the stores that import some of these exotic foods, depending on where you are, right? Because not every place will have them, but depending on where you are, it's always good to have these. If you have them for free, like if you grow them, perfect. But if you don't have them as available or accessible, it's good to maybe get them maybe once a month, not to make them like a regular part of your list, but you can still get them, like, as a treat once a month or 2 months or 3 months. But it's always good to try and bring them and incorporate them into your diet when you can. Okay, so we've got apples and similar fruit trees. So Song of Solomon 2, verse 3. So again, a lot of fruits, recovery carb, fiber support, right? Vitamin C, you've got some water inside. And like I was saying, like, okay, they help with appetite, like apples, so they fit into appetite control, digestive support, steady energy, better than processed desserts. So again, fruits, good for like recovery, giving you that boost. Okay, so same thing with dates and dried fruit. We find that in First Samuel 30, verse 12, and in First Chronicles, verse 12. First Chronicles 12, verse 40. So fast energy, recovery carb, natural sugars, potassium, fiber, polyphenols. Dates are useful when you need a quick energy, and they still need to be portion controlled because they're healthy sweet, but you still need to be portion controlled. So some people actually resort to making their sweeteners out of dates because they're very sweet, especially like dried dates. They get very, very sweet. So that's an option. Like if you're ever thinking like, okay, I need to have like a natural source of sugar, you can have honey, you can have dates, depending on your palate as well. Like you can figure out like, okay, what do I prefer? Do I prefer honey? Do I prefer dates? And yeah, so these are all options that you can include in your diet as well. So now we are looking at raisins. Raisins, one of my favorite. Okay, raisins. First Samuel 25, verse 18, and First Samuel 30, verse 12. Fast energy, recovery carb, right? Raisins, just eat them. And yeah, like I mean, they were good. Like I actually enjoy a lot of like sugary fruits and sugar, just even like not like sugar on its own, but let's say for example like honey, like taste. Honey, ice cream, though in ice cream that's like my indulgence. That's what I'll eat. Gelato, ice cream gelato, things like that of that nature. Cakes, depends on the type of cake, but I can't have too much of cake. But for ice cream, yeah, for sure. Like I'm gonna dig in. I'm gonna have some ice cream and enjoy some ice cream. Yeah, so that's my own. And yeah, so fast energy, concentrated carbohydrate, that's raisins. And raisins are dense in energy, so they can work well around activity when appetite is low. But they need discipline because dried fruit is easy to overeat. That is true. Dried fruit is easy to overeat. That is true. I've come across that plenty times. Okay, so now we've got olives, right? So we've got our olives. Deuteronomy 8, verse 8, healthy support, monosaturated fat, vitamin E, polyphenols. Olives and olive products fit in your fat category well because they bring unsaturated fats and satiety. So that is olives and olive oil, right? So we're looking at Deuteronomy 8, verse 8, First Kings 12, First Kings 17, verse 12. So primary healthy fats. So these are now fats. We're now talking about fatty things, right? So fatty foods that bring healing, because now with fats they support our cell function production and also hormones as well. So hormone production, so fats are very crucial and essential for that. So having healthy sources of fat is good for you. It's not about demonizing fats and say that fats are bad, but we still need to use them in moderation. It's not about pouring because we say that they're healthy, then you pour it over your salad everywhere. And you got to do it in moderation, right? Because it's not going to help because they also contain fats again. Like I think we covered in the other stream when we talked about food and my fitness pal, we talked about how 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories, which is more than double 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of carbs. So it's important to make sure that we're using these and eating these in moderation. Moderation, not excess. Moderation. Right. Okay. So olive oil is one of the clearest biblical foods that aligns with modern evidence for heart friendly fats and better long term health when used in place of less healthy fats. Ooh, so right there, that's something for us to keep in mind. So we want to make sure that we include healthy fats. Okay, so now we've got honey, one of my favorite. So Proverbs 24, verse 13, 1 Samuel 14, verse 27, Proverbs 25, verse 16. Fast energy, not a staple. Natural sugars, small amounts of bioactive compounds. So honey can provide quick energy and provide evidence supports, and some evidence supports topical use in wound care, but nutritionally, it is still sugar. Scripture itself already gives the caution, good, but not for excess. That is true. I'll tell you that. That is true. Because that is also when we talk about Proverbs, right? Like when someone is saying, like, eat just enough honey. If you have too much, you will vomit. So you want to have just enough. Just enough. So, but I prefer to use honey in like teas or like coffee. That's why I prefer to use my honey just in the morning when I'm starting off the day with my coffee or with some tea, and it's good. It's the best thing. Or if like let's say if you're sick, just having some honey with whatever tea that you're making, like with the lemons, with the ginger, add it, well, yeah, with ginger too. Like if you add it with ginger, I think it makes it better than just drinking raw ginger just on its own. So just adding that bit of flavor is helpful. And yeah, and just going that way. And then next, we're looking at fish. So fish, classic protein. Can't go wrong with fish. Some people are allergic, which is okay. But if you do eat fish, this is a good source of protein. Very good. Fish with scales and fins, by the way, right? Not catfish. Not I mean, it probably has some protein, but according to what the Bible is telling us, it's like catfish also like scavengers. So they're like bottom feeders. Because when you really think about the foods that God said you should eat, especially when it comes to like meat, um, anything that moves on the earth, whether on its belly, whether on four legs, or that swims, what you find is that almost all the animals that we're told not to eat, they're somewhat bottom feeders. They don't eat the healthiest sources of energy on their own. If you really pay attention to it, just as we know how these animals live on Earth as right now, as of now, these animals that God said we shouldn't eat, they're either bottom feeders or they eat weird food. Because again, like we said, like the source, the purest form of energy is from the sun, goes into the plants. From the plants, we eat them. So if these animals are eating, maybe if, especially if an animal eats another animal, that's like, oh, we're not going to be touching that animal. If it eats another animal, if it's like an actual predator and and actually preys on other animals, like we're like, no, we're not going to be eating. I mean, some people eat like crocodile. Some people eat, I don't know, like lion. Some people eat bear. But I'm like, nah, I ain't eating that. Once you really understand some of these things, right? Because I think sometimes when you find people who are like, okay, I'm vegan, I'm not eating any animals, anything to do with animals. I think maybe they're just exposed to some people who just take it to the extreme in terms of the kinds of animals that they eat, or maybe how they treat animals, or how they kill that. I shouldn't say that word, but how they take out animals. So that is one of the things that I think maybe if we understood the types of relationships that we're supposed to have with some of these animals and how we're supposed to actually take care of them and also make them food for us. Then maybe if that was, a conversation that is shared, because I know some people start saying, "Oh no, but it's coming from the Bible. Oh, the Bible's old. Like, why are we listening to the Bible?" I'm like, no. Like, when you actually look at it and start reading and understanding it practically, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So we shouldn't just discount something because it was written like thousands of years ago. It doesn't mean that the wisdom doesn't apply. It's still relevant today. It's not outdated. The Bible is not outdated. So if we start try and say no, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to listen to this word or this wisdom, yeah, it's not a personal feeling or personal opinion that someone might have, but we want to stick with what works and what's best for us as humanity, as people. So let's keep going. So fish, refined fish is mentioned again, Matthew 14 verse 17, Luke 24 verse 42 to 43, John 21 verse 9. So lean protein, recovery, healthy fats, right? So we have that. That's protein, omega 3 fats in many species, selenium, B vitamins. Fish supports muscle repair and heart health. Fatty fish in particular supports cardiovascular health through omega 3 fats. So that is a good source. So this is like a general, this is general fish, right? So now we've got salmon, we've got trout. And also, after the resurrection, when Jesus arose from the dead, he also met his disciples and they were fishing. And then he called them over as they were fishing. He's like, "Oh, yeah, come." And they had breakfast. They actually had fish with Jesus. It was the first meal that I mean, that's recorded that we know in the Bible that he had. And yeah, like that's what he had. So just think about it. Hmm. So we've got fish, salmon, trout as parallels to biblical fish, right? So that's still fish. So it falls in that category. So same thing, protein, healthy fat. Um, so we covered that. So now we've got lamb. Lamb, Exodus 24 verse 8 and 1 Samuel 25 verse 18. Excuse me. So protein rich, sorry, rich, lamb is rich in protein, iron, and provides a source for energy, strength, support. Complete protein, right? So we talked about how beans has some amino acids, and the amino acids make up the protein. So some amino acids, we don't find them in beans. So something like lamb, beef, actual meat will provide us the full spectrum of amino acids. So the profile for beans is good when you, because it's also like a carbohydrate, but it has a high protein amount compared to most carbohydrates. So that's why it's also considered a good source, and obviously has micronutrients and whatnot. So when you're looking at like pure protein sources, you have things like lamb, you have beef, calves, oxen. They have a complete profile for protein. So they have the amino acids that you require, that your body requires, all of them. So complete protein. You've got your iron, zinc, B12, and the iron, zinc also important for supporting your hormones as well, and testosterone. So it's good. So that's why people say like you should eat meat. For a lot of men, it's like, okay, as a man you should be eating meat. That's one of the things that you find is that a lot of the meats, red meats, they support testosterone production. Also, with the fats that come with the meat, they support production of testosterone. Okay, and then lamb supports muscle repair, oxygen transport. So That's one of the things with like red meats. They also have they support muscle repair, red blood cell production, and supporting your oxygen transport. But like all red meats, base fits best in a balanced diet, right? Not the center of every meal. So like again, I don't think the whole idea of like specific diets that focus on one food group is the best for everyone. A lot of people who tell you like, okay, I stick with carnivore and I eat meat only, I eat veggies only, like people who go hard on one thing or like keto, those diets are more prescriptive and for sure because every diet will work based on the conditions, based on certain and specific conditions. Every diet works and it works best for different people in different positions. Because if someone is diabetic and they're told, like, okay, go on a keto diet, that diet might be the best. And someone with hypertension, they're told, okay, go on Mediterranean diet, that diet might be the best. So all of these diets can work. It just depends on what is your specific condition. But for the general public, general health, like people who are just healthy, they don't have any underlying conditions. They don't necessarily need to try and subscribe to one particular diet and think that that is the diet that works for them, but they actually need to support their health by having a balanced diet because you need all the other nutrients. Because if you focus on one, you're not giving your body other nutrients and other sources of food or like more carbs or fats or micronutrients to support your health, to support all the functions that your body requires. So you really have to pay attention to say, okay, who am I taking this advice from? So it needs to be tailored, it needs to be customized to your specific lifestyle, to your specific conditions. And that is one of the most important things. So don't just take anything and just say, I'm going to run with it. Because that person who's telling you, they're not telling you that they're sick and they're using their diet to treat a condition. They might not be telling you that. So you really have to think about, okay, what is it that applies to me? So that's one thing to just leave there for you. So beef, calves, oxen, Proverbs 15, verse 17, Luke 15, verse 23. So we've got a protein and iron, complete protein, iron, zinc, B12. So same thing. Red meat supports strength, iron status, and iron status, especially when someone is under consuming protein, but it should sit inside an overall whole food pattern. Okay, and same thing we talked about. Okay, so we've got goat milk and dairy. So Proverbs 27, verse 27, Deuteronomy 32, verse 14. Protein. So this dairy is good for protein, bone health, recovery, calcium, rich in calcium, protein, phosphorus, often vitamin D, depending on product. And dairy foods can support a bone health and recovery because they combine protein and a bone-related minerals in one package. So there you go. So you've got your dairy. Dairy is not always bad, right? Like, I mean, it's again, it's in itself is not bad. But when people start messing around with it, trying to squeeze the most that they can out of that dairy and say, hey, I'm going to sell this dairy to like the whole country, then you're going to run into problems, production problems. So when people now try to capitalize everything to the max and produce for the entire country, say, okay, I want to produce for the entire country, it brings in problems because they want to streamline everything, cut costs, and also make a lot of profit, which I'm still fine like with capitalism, like people, can make their money. But the part that we tend to forget is that we're creating more problems. Yes, you want to feed a nation, but you're creating more problems. Because I think this is my view on some of this stuff, right? Like when we talk about capitalism and food and stuff like that, to be more sustainable, you really have to create like clusters around the country. Like you can't have everything controlled by one company and they have their headquarters in one place, and you just have to allow other people to play the game. That's just how it is. It's best for society, I believe. And you can have different competitors, people who supply locally in those specific places, because by the time something is produced and then it's transported halfway across the country, the the time to transport, and you have to add preservatives because who knows if it's going to get there on time. Okay, shelf life, thinking about shelf life, things like that. So when you really think about practically, like you really think about it, you're like, oh wow, okay, this is what they do. Okay, they need to capitalize and maximize their profits. Okay, cool, fine, but my expense? At my expense? Eh, I don't think I like that. I don't like that option. So, next thing that happens is that people turn to local farmers and local producers, people who are paying attention to this stuff now. They now turn to local farmers and local producers, people who are producing locally, because they don't have to add all these extra things to their products, because they don't have to try and transport across the country. So, these are things that we can think about. So when you're looking at things like goat milk, dairy products, and there's also like regulation in terms of like some of these products, especially when it comes to dairy, and then when you're processing it in for a country, because it's like, okay, what if it goes bad, and then you have to recall, people get sick, you get sued, all of those things. So the different considerations to think about, but when you find that, okay, you can find a source of dairy like goat, cow, you can actually have, and it provides more nutrients to you, right? Because some of these big companies now think about production, so they add hormones because they need to increase production. So they make their livestock breed faster and also increase the production of the dairy products. So it's not always good for people that are now consuming, because they're also eating and taking in those hormones as well, and then that can affect that can affect our own systems and our own hormones as well at the same time. And we start developing different conditions and illnesses and different things that we never used to have. So those are things to start thinking about when you think about, okay, the Bible diet. Why is Nate talking about the Bible diet so much? Why has he always been talking about the Bible diet? The principle and the essence of everything is going back to whole foods, going back as close as possible to the source, because we're being, whether you realize it or not, but we're being pushed further and further away from the source. That's why a lot of things seem like they don't make sense in the world. A lot of people are confused. It seems like things are not adding up, things are not making sense. It's because we're being pushed further and further away from the source. And more things are being put in between us and the source. And then we're being told, like, okay, it's good for us. It's convenience and it's better for you. Like we're advancing. Life is better than how life was 1,000 years ago. That's what they sell you on. And we're advancing. Now we're going to be including AI in everything. And we're going to include robotics in everything. So these are things to pay attention to, like even when it comes to our health, like how much more are we being pushed further and further away from the source? This is important for us to think about and consider. So now we're going to go on and continue. We are almost there. So we've got curds, butter, cheese. That's Deuteronomy 32, verse 14. 2 Samuel 17, verse 29. So we've got fat and protein support. So that's curds, butter, cheese, dairy fat, right? So that's dairy fat, protein, calcium in some forms. And then, so these foods can nourish, but in our system, they're best used for support to be supporting foods as not as a center of a diet because they're more energy dense. So these would contain a bit more fat. So you don't want to overdo it. I know some people who are like, I eat cheese with every meal. Oh, and the calories that they're eating, they don't really measure because, sometimes when you have like a favorite indulgence, you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna take a little bit, and then a little bit, and then a little bit, a little bit. You sort of like protect that food group because you enjoy it so much, right? So it's always good to be honest with yourself to say, okay, is this like a very nutrient dense food that I'm eating? Does it have too much sugar? Does it have too much fat? And just eat it in proportion, in moderation, right? In proportion to what you what you're also eating with other foods, right? So don't like when you eat an egg, don't add so much cheese as if you're eating the cheese. You've put the egg in the cheese instead of putting cheese in the egg, right? So the meal is the egg, not the cheese being the meal, right? So you want to eat it in moderation. And yeah, so you have next thing is you have quail and poultry. You've got quail, poultry, Exodus 16, verse 13, and Numbers 11, verse 31 to 32. Lean protein, you've got complete protein, B vitamins, minerals. Poultry fits into the system as protein. Well, because it supports muscle repair, satiety without heavy processing, right? So this is a different type of protein compared to like your lamb and your beef. Chicken is easier to process as well digestively. So this is a good source, and yeah, it's a good source to eat as a supplement to your protein, so you can have different meals. You get that variety in your diet as well. So that gives you a good base and foundation. And then now we're going to move on to nuts, including almonds and pistachio. Ooh, almonds and pistachio. Nuts are good. I like nuts. They're also good for your brain. Nuts are good. Nuts, good for your brain function. So they're also very important for mitochondria. So mitochondria being the power, the energy power cell, like the power plant in your cells. The the molecule inside or the organism inside your cells that gives them energy to function and do what they're supposed to do. So mitochondria. So those are important. So unsaturated fats, fiber, magnesium, vitamin E, plant protein. So nuts support fullness and heart health. They're excellent for control foods, and because they help replace processed snacks with something more satisfying and nutrient dense. So again, so if you like snacks, you can include nuts just to give you that extra satiety in terms of you just not craving other foods because they have fats, because fats are good for like helping with satiety, right? So you want to eat enough, make sure that you have those in your diet. And then next, we're looking at seeds. So Genesis 1. Oh, yeah, so nuts was Genesis 43, verse 11. And seeds, we have them in Genesis 1, verse 29. We talked about them with the seed bearing trees. Exactly. So we've got healthy fats, minerals, and they give us fiber, unsaturated fats, minerals, and seeds fit the same fat and fiber logic as nuts. Useful for satiety, hormone support, micronutrient density. Let's go. We've got more veggies. We're tapping into veggies. So we've got cucumbers, Numbers 11:5, hydration support, low calorie volume, water content, small amounts of vitamin K and protein. right? So what cucumbers, they hold a lot of water. So they're good to add to your salad, give it a bit of flavor. Or if you add your salad with some cucumbers, some lettuce, some cherry tomatoes, just gives it some flavor. And you put some salt and pepper with a bit of oil. That's pretty good, actually, when you try that. And then cucumbers will not transform someone by themselves, but they fit your high volume, low friction nutrition approach. Because sometimes salads are good for someone who's like, oh, I feel hungry all the time. But when you have a salad, it's low calories, it fills you up, you're hydrated, you're good. So if you make those nice bowls of salad, and sometimes you can even add like chop up some chicken breast and add it to your diet, and boom, you're good. You're good to go. Okay, and then now we've got garlic, Numbers 11, verse 5 again. So flavor plus functional food, organosulfur compounds, low calorie flavor builder, right? So garlic is good for your food and gives it some taste because you also have like garlic salt, you've got garlic powder. You can add different types of garlic flavors to your food as part of like the spices and herbs category as well. So garlic can make simple meals more sustainable, and research supports modest benefits for cardiovascular markers and immune function, especially in supplement research. Though it should not be oversold as medicine. True. And there's also evidence that it supports like if someone has like hypertension, it also helps with helping with hypertension, high blood pressure. So it's always good to eat like maybe a clove and yeah, and then you can also eat the clove with a bit of honey and then you eat it together. So it doesn't taste as bad if you're eating a clove, an entire clove. So you can try that. It also helps. And yeah, and so I think let's see, garlic. Yeah, so that's one. And then the one thing, the smell though for garlic, that's one thing to like think about. The smell for garlic can be very strong. It can be very strong. So it's important to maybe have some gum if you have some gum, or you could brush your teeth after you have some garlic. Right. I actually think the one where you eat it with honey makes most sense because the honey sort of masks the garlic taste and the smell. So it might be an option. And then you drink lots of water as well. So that's critical. That's critical because I think there's some people who, when they start perspirating and sweating, they smell off the garlic if they eat a lot of garlic in their diet. So something good to keep in mind. And yeah, and so this is garlic. Okay, and then water. One of the most important parts of any diet. This is one of the most important piece. Water, hydration. Because you can go a couple days, 40 days, no food, fasting, 40 days, 40 nights. You gotta eat, you gotta drink some water though. You gotta have a water fast and drink some water. It's crucial for your body. Your body requires water, it requires hydration. So, hydration, so performance for water is good for performance and for hyd- water is good for hydration and performance and recovery. So Exodus 17, verse 6, and John 4, verse 14. So essential fluid for every system in the body, right? Water is non negotiable. Hydration supports physical performance, recovery, circulation, temperature regulation, and daily function. Do not skip the water. Drink water. And then wine. So wine is not necessarily something that I would necessarily consider to be when we're looking at health as a whole, is it depends on your own conscience, right? When it comes to wine, it depends on your own conscience. Hmm. The Bible does not ban wine, say don't drink wine, but it does say drink in moderation. And mm, but it's also not like an essential when it comes to your health, right? Like to say like okay, your health, it's not it for some people can argue to say okay, it's good for you, but the benefits of it is more to do with maybe your gut as well, to like almost like sanitizing your gut in some way, some arguments that people have said. But research is coming out to also say that alcohol, any amount of alcohol, is not good for your brain. It's also not good for your brain. So these are things to think about. So even if it's like, people say that a glass a day, like look into people who are doing more research into longevity. And I've tried, it didn't work for me, but you can go ahead and try. It's good to do in moderation. But in terms of, it's not for everyone. Some of the things that we've covered are mostly for everyone, but wine is not always for everyone. So, but if you choose to, you have to do it in moderation, right? So Psalm 104 verse 15 talks about wine. John 2 verse 1 to 11 talks about wine. And also we have records of Jesus also having wine. And alcoholic beverages with calories, no essential nutritional need. So wine comparing to like let's say beer, it's probably better in terms of like calories when you're talking about strictly like health function. Like it's better than beer in terms of like extra calories that you might not need because most times if you want to control your caloric intake, it's better to eat your calories instead of drinking them, right? So when you compare it to beer, wine can be something that you can include in your meals, like maybe one glass or something, but not overdoing it if you choose to. So that is one of the things because we have to think about stewardship, we have to think about moderation and making sure that we're not falling into debauchery as well when we drink. And that is probably one of the things that we would want to cover. So right now we've covered quite a bit in terms of the biblical foods and the food list. So I want you to take this away with you just to really reflect maybe on what you're currently doing for your diet. And maybe one of these foods that I've mentioned, you might find a place for them in your current diet. Say, okay, maybe I could actually replace one thing with another thing that aligns more with the Bible diet and foods found in the Bible diet. And maybe you're already eating some of these foods already, but maybe the next step is to find for locally sourced foods instead of buying some of these commercially processed and ultra processed foods so that you support your health from the ground and you start going back more and more to the source because the more distance that happens or that's created between us and the source, the more we're losing out something when the distance, it's like there are too many middle men coming in and taking away and stealing from us, right? Because it's really theft when you think about it. And I mean, like, obviously, like, you're like, Nate, if I remove all the middlemen, then what am I going to eat? Because that's taking out the grocery store and I can't go and just eat nothing, right? I'm not saying that, but think about the ways, the things that you can start improving, right? It's not to say overhaul everything, it's just to try and pull back, say, hey guys, let's stop, let's pause here. Right, let's pause. Let's see where we're going here. Where are we going with this whole thing? And then look back and see, oh, okay, this is what we're removing. Okay, this is what we're adding. Okay, but how does it impact me? And so start looking for sources for food that are as natural as possible. And I think the best still is to build connections with people who are like local farmers in your area. And if you personally have a farm or you have land that you can work to grow food, go ahead and start doing that. If you're already doing it, perfect. And maybe if you're already doing it, but you're using a lot of chemicals and seeds and different seeds, like start thinking about these things. Like, how can you rejuvenate your land so that it can give you more nutrients, rotate your lands, maybe, I don't know. But think about how you can do this. Think about how you can work and improve your health, and even if it's not just for you specifically, right? Because sometimes you think about, okay, ourselves, but maybe it's for your kids, maybe it's for your grandchildren, maybe it's for your great grandchildren. So these are the things that we want to start thinking about, to see, okay, how can we get back and get closer to what God intended for us? How can we eat like the kings and the prophets used to in the past? Like, how can we do that? How can we eat like Jesus ate? How can we do that? Like, those are the things that we should really ask ourselves, especially if we're looking at this and saying, okay, we're Christians and we want to worship God and we want to steward ourselves and live closer to God and live a life that's more aligned with what God intends for us. These are the things that we have to start thinking about, because a lot of people start, I mean, it's not even their fault. It's just because sometimes we're just born, and we're born into a system, and we're born in a position that we've never really questioned a lot of the things that are happening around us. And we just think that it's normal. It has no effect, or it doesn't connect, or it doesn't relate. And because we've just been born in those situations or in those environments, we just take it as, okay, that's how it is. Like, there's no other way to do it. Or it's been framed as, oh, it's not possible. Whichever way that it's been framed for you, or whichever way that you've grown up to see the world in, if you're a Christian, you might want to take a step back and pause and say, hey, like, okay, what are the things that in my life have led me to live a life that's further and further away from what God intended? Because things are going to accelerate over the next few years with, let's say, AI and robots and stuff like that. And they're going to try and make it more convenient for us and put more technology between us and God. That's really happening right now. So these are the things that we have to actually start thinking about. Say, okay, how about my health? That is the one thing that you have. That is the one thing that God said, your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit. That is our job, to steward our bodies. But if we keep putting things in between us and God, our health is something that we have to take care of. And if we don't take some time to just pause and say, okay, what am I doing here? Like, practically, right? Because a lot of times we're thinking that, okay, worship is just, going to church or taking out my Bible to read. But worship and stewardship also includes how we live our lives, how we eat, how we train, how we train our bodies, how we relate to animals, right? God said that I'll take account for all the animals. He'll take account for the blood for all the animals, even the ones that we eat. He takes account. So that matters. That is part of stewardship. That is part of worship. And also how we relate to each other as humanity, right? Our relationships, those also matter. That is all worship. And we're supposed to obey God in everything that we do, not just in church, not just when we're praying, not just when we read the Bible, not just in the morning, It's every single time with everything that we do. That is the first commandment. The greatest commandment is loving God with all your mind, heart, and soul and strength. So everything that we have, everything that we have to dedicate our lives to God. We have to love God with everything that we have. Everything. Our soul, our mind, our hearts, our strength, our bodies right there. And show our dedication, our worship, that we serve the one and true God up in heaven, our Heavenly Father. That is what we do. And through Christ Jesus, we remain in our Lord and we obey His commands. Just want to leave you with this blessing, and I hope you have a great day, a fantastic day, and you've been blessed by this video. I hope you've been blessed. So thank you for joining me and watching, and I will see you. May God continue to bless you and continue to be with you wherever you are. God bless you and your family. And I hope you have an amazing day. And I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, by the way, next week we'll be doing something different, something new. We might start tomorrow, next week, tomorrow, but most likely next week, the whole of next week. But we'll try something different so that every day we sort of have like each day throughout the week we sort of have sort of different themes, because I think there's a lot for us to go through and for us to cover, which I'm not going to be able to cover everything in one stream again. And with the nature of YouTube is always changing with the different things that they tell us that we have to do. So it's the evolution of the channel as it goes. As you know, like when I first started, it's obviously gone through a lot of changes, and I've tested different things and seeing how everything works. And so we're going to be doing something different next week. Every day we'll have a different theme for each day of the week, so that we know exactly what we're going to be discussing. And certain streams, you can catch certain streams that you enjoy and that you don't enjoy. And you're like, okay, maybe I'm not ready for this. You can just bookmark it. You can come back. You can always come back to it. And yeah, and then you can catch up on our show. So you'll have something different on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I have 4 days figured out, like as to what we're going to be covering. And then the one day I'm still trying to work out what we're actually going to be covering. It's either going to be on this channel or a different channel, but it's got to do with, yeah, more like what's going on. Because I think there's a part where we just have to separate some of the things that we discuss on the channel, and yeah, and just make it easier and give it more structure, I would say. And just by having a bit more structure, it helps anyone who's coming to the channel for the first time, anyone who's been with me since the beginning. Then they kind of know, like, oh yeah, I want to tune in on Monday, I want to tune on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then you also know, okay, if I'm coming in, you can catch up right on the weekend when you have a bit more time. You can come and catch up on all the other videos. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to just maybe give you a heads up. So we'll talk more about it in the next stream, and I hope you have a blessed day. I'll catch you tomorrow. Cheers.